Now, so far, we've been doing 2D transforms, two-dimensional. So they only deal with the X and the Y, and they're flat. And those are the transforms we've been using. But there's also 3D transformations, and those ones allow you to have a Z value as well. So we know that Y goes left and right. Nope. X goes left and right. Y goes up and down, right? And then Z on a web page, the Z, if it's positive, it moves towards you. And if it's negative, it moves away from you. So it moves towards you or away from you is the Z axis. And we can use 3D properties that have all of these options. For example, so we're going to do rotate Z on figure 2. So up here in figure 2, it's still part of our transform property. So just add a space, and I'm getting too long here, so I'm going to drop down and add it on the next line. But it's really just adding a space. It's still part of that transform property, right? I used a carriage return, but it's still part of the transform property because it's before the semicolon. And we want to rotate Z. There you go. And we'll do it 30 degrees. Now remember that the Z is in, it's this way. Rotate around so we have rotate X, which is this way, rotate Y, that is this way, and then rotate Z, which is coming towards you, right? So we want to rotate along that axis that's coming away from or to you. It rotates that way. So let's go see if we can see that happen. Okay. So there we got a bit of a rotation around the Z axis. And then we want to do a rotate Y of 60 degrees. So rotate around the Y, and that's this angle, right? That axis is the Y axis, and this one's a little bit bigger. This is going to be a 60-degree rotation. So we do that, and let's see how that changes. And there it rotates around that Y. Looks a little bit bigger than I expected. Yeah, rotate Z 30 degrees. Yep. And rotate Y 60 degrees. Okay, so rotate it around that Y axis. That really changed how it looked, right? Okay, let's do it with figure 3. We're going to add a rotate Y. Again, in the same transform property. So we'll do a rotate Y. And this one, we're going to do it by negative 70 degrees. So it'll do it just in the other direction. So again, we're rotating around the Y axis. Okay, there we got that. That rotated it around the Y, negative 70 degrees. And now we want to translate in the Z direction. Now translate, remember translate, we're moving it. But this time we want to translate it in the Z direction. And my editor moved that back up for me. So translate, but now we're translating in the Z direction and a minus 20 degrees. And remember, negative means it goes further away from you, positive closer to you. So we're moving it further away. And let's see what happens. Oh, it broke. Let's go see what we did. Translate Z minus 20. Oh, I said degrees, and this is not a rotation. It's minus 20 pixels. It's a length, a distance. So we want to move back 20 pixels. Notice when it broke everything. And that's the way it is. Often when you make one error, it breaks everything. And so it did. And there it moved it back, right? Translated it away from us because we used a negative Z value. Now, these are looking very different than they did before. And so we're going to add another property that will actually give these some different perspective. And in fact, it is the perspective property that we're going to set. And so this perspective property, it's a 3D property, and it's this idea that things get smaller as they move towards the horizon. So we see that in everyday life, and it's something that's really common to us. But now we want to implement it in our code, right? So here we have perspective. property and see how it's going away. It says, okay, do this perspective as if it's getting smaller into the horizon. It's giving it that depth into it. And we can see that perspective here in this demonstration. This is from W3 Schools as well. When the perspective is really big, it's not going back very, very fast, right? It's not narrowing against the horizon as it goes back. But as we move this down, it gets a little bit steeper, and you see that perspective. The smaller it is, it has to make that change faster. And so we go back down and get it smaller and smaller, and now the perspective is really narrowing down into the horizon very quickly. The smaller it gets, and you can go way down, it gets very fast, yeah. So that's that perspective, how it gets smaller as it goes away from us. So we're going to add that and see what effect that has here. We're going to add that. Now, to add this, the perspective actually gets applied to the child elements. So here we're going to put it on the article, and then the children of the article are the ones that are going to get this. So you don't put it on the one that you want to actually change. You actually put it on the parent. And so we want all of these figure boxes to have a perspective. And to do that, they are children of the article. So we're actually going to put it on the article. So up here in the transformation styles, add one for article. There's the article. And in here, we're going to add this perspective property. And we're going to do it at 600 pixels. And that's a pretty good size number, so it won't happen too fast, but it'll give us some of that perspective, that depth, getting smaller as it goes further away. So let's go ahead and refresh and see what happens. And there, notice how that really changed it, because it says, okay, these have been rotated. Remember, we rotated them around the y-axis. When we did that, we saw less of them, because they were turned in that direction, and we saw less of them. But now when we add that perspective, that depth, we see more of them, and we see that happening as it goes back. So it's the combination of putting these together that gives some really interesting perspectives.